And so if it says like you have to run for 42 minutes, my attitude looking at that candy bar is, well, I guess I'm going to get fat.
Welcome to episode 56. The topics today are: what impact will electric cars have on oil companies, if the Fed will pivot, and we have more lightning round questions at the end. By the end of 2021, the number of electric vehicles on the world's roadways has tripled since 2018. Alex, what impact do you think widespread adoption of electric vehicles will have on oil companies, if any?
So the first thing is, I guess it depends on the time horizon we're looking at. If we look at long-term enough, decades, maybe 100 years, you'd think eventually oil and gas will go the way of like whale oil or using wood to heat your home for, most people in the developed world. Short to medium term, though, I think this is going to have pretty minimal impact. The biggest reason is not so much that electric cars don't work or they're no good or they're, pieces of junk. It's just that there isn't enough lithium to go around to put enough of them on the road to replace even a significant chunk of the global commuter vehicle supply. And that's not even to mention, trucks or boats, which use a different version, or, diesel engines on the world's railroads. There's just not enough lithium to go around. Even like, all the analysts who look at them are saying by 2025, you're starting to look at a real lithium deficit and prices going up because of all these EV mandates. They will try and push the number of EV vehicles being on the road beyond what is feasible with the available amount of lithium. Another big problem is, even if you had enough lithium, there's not enough power generation capabilities in the United States or many other places to account for taking all the energy that the vehicles use that comes from fossil fuels and transitioning to something that they plug into their house. There's just not enough electricity to go around, and there's no viable plan right now to increase the amount of electrical generation to account for all the EVs that even the state of California wants to put on the roads within the next 10 to 15 years. So I think all these mandates, they are more ceremonial than they are realistic. State of California, for example, has been saying for a couple of decades now, within 10 to 15 years, we're going to have all EVs, and they keep moving the goalposts because it's not feasible. So I think we're going to roll around to 2030, 2035, and California's goal is going to be to like 2050. So, until there's an electrical build out or a breakthrough in battery technology that gets us past lithium, I don't think this is going to have much impact on oil companies. I think they're still going to be selling plenty of oil and gas.
Watching the adoption of electric vehicles is actually pretty fascinating. It's kind of fun to watch. EV is the big tech shift of this decade. Last decade, it was smartphones and touchscreen technology. In the 1970s, it was color TVs. And if you even go further back to the 1900s, gas cars were the big demand shifter. So with more and more people replacing their gas vehicles with electric vehicles, it will definitely have an impact on gas and oil companies, but it's not necessarily going to be a detrimental one. On paper, in a zero-sum analysis, if you increase the demand of electric vehicle consumption, you will equally reduce the demand for gas. That makes sense. But humans don't always behave the way economic models should suggest. And oil companies, they can be flexible. They can adapt to changes in the consumer demand, as we've seen many times before. So there's many variables that will determine the success or failure of gas and oil companies as these electric vehicles are rolled out. First of all, electric vehicles, the price needs to come down in order to level up on the adoption curve. They're still relatively more expensive than other gas vehicles out there. They also need to be more convenient than gas vehicles, and they have to offer greater utility. This also assumes that these huge gas and oil companies are just going to sit back and watch themselves get overtaken in the market. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think as it becomes more clear on the rate of EV adoption, gas and oil companies are going to start producing less gas and oil, and they'll start mining for lithium, or they'll start investing in clean energy supply for charging stations for these electric vehicles. As Alex mentioned in his thoughts, I think a somewhat overlooked factor is that the shift in EV power consumption is not going to be an issue. Where's all the electricity going to come from? It has to come from somewhere, and it's going to suck this huge power supply off the grid. I think that gas companies are going to not only weather this change in demand, but I think they're going to be positioned rather well.
Every Monday, Alex gives us his research analysis on all of our portfolio strategies. And it was interesting looking at our single selective or our SSR strategy, single sector rotation, that oil and energy is up 7% for the year when the S&P 500 is down 21%. That's a 28% differential between energy as one industry and the S&P 500, which includes energy, by the way, on the aggregate, which tells me that investors believe that in the future, energy companies are going to be okay. We tend to view our world from an American perspective, but energy companies are global. A friend of mine used to do business in Angola, and he said that the three most powerful people in Angola is the dictator, and then the executives for Coca-Cola and Exxon. If alternative energy resources like California is trying to move us towards is more expensive and less reliable, the oil companies will just send more and more of their oil to third world countries to give them a comparative or even an absolute advantage in energy, as long as carbon-based energies are more efficient. Right now, there's no contest. Carbon-based energy is way better than the alternatives that are out there. And if we won't buy it, I'm sure there's a lot of third world countries who will. And I think that the profits of the oil companies will be just fine.
Columbia University did a study in 2018, so it's a little bit dated, but they basically asked 15 forecasters who work in the energy industry for different organizations, so for like governments, investment banks, and oil companies. But some of them think is going to happen is that aviation, freight transportation, the demand for oil in those sectors are going to offset any decline you get in the passenger vehicle sector, because passenger vehicles only make up about 25% of oil demand globally. And again, this is 2018. I don't know if it's changed that much, but this is what Columbia University thinks in 2018. So 25% of the demand is changing, but electric, like clean energy, is not readily available for the aviation industry. Even though I've seen some early prototypes of electric planes, nothing is actually viable yet. And other forms of transportation, the clean energy version just isn't there. They're working on electric trucks, or well, I guess they have some electric transport trucks, but nothing that I've seen in actual use. Nikola had that bright idea where they rolled their truck down a hill, even though it didn't work. You can make it look like it works, which is pretty creative, but at this point, not a feasible option. And you have rail, but rails, that's been in high demand for years. So they're thinking that aviation, other transportation freights are going to possibly offset any decline they see from electric vehicles. Also, Spencer Dale of British Petroleum's chief economist doesn't think that there's going to be a significant change in the next 20 years in oil demand. But British Petroleum and Shell have been buying smaller companies that produce electric charging ports and putting them in gas stations. So they're basically building an electric charging network and acquiring companies that are in that area. So it's good to view, instead of viewing like Exxon and Shell and BP as oil companies, you might do well to view them as energy companies, because Drew's right. They're not just going to roll over and be like, pull a blockbuster video on us and be like, well, that's it for us. And then the other thing is that you're right, is that California already struggles with rolling blackouts when everybody cranks on their AC in the summer. So where are they going to get the extra demand for all these electric cars? I don't know, but at least until 2040, nobody in the energy industry seems to be that concerned. And the oil companies are, like Exxon is buying, is like producing greases and lubricants that will help increase the mileage on electric cars. So, and Ford's buying battery companies. So these are energy companies, not oil companies, and they're going to adapt and survive. They're smart people. So
Yeah.
I think
One of you gentlemen used the analogy of whale oil. But the thing is, when we stopped using whale oil, it wasn't like whale oil was so much more efficient than petroleum. And then the government came in and said, you can no longer use whale oil. You have to use this inefficient, expensive petroleum oil.
Right.
It's a little bit different system right now because the other options are not as cost effective and they're not as feasible yet. So when that day comes, I think the conversation we're having today will be different.
I will say in that the Asian continent is that electric vehicles are smaller and cheaper than the ones that they're selling in America. So I think they've actually seen greater adoption in Asia than they have in the U.S. So because they're, the cost comparison between like a gas car and an electric car is not, it's like 20 to 30% more, whereas in the US it's 40 to 50% more. So like I think Drew already said, or somebody already said that, when you get those costs to come down, you'll probably see greater adoption. But right now, at least in the US, they're kind of expensive. Like that Rivian truck, they're pretty cool, but what's it cost? Like 50 grand to buy it? And you can go buy a Chevy Spark that costs 13 to 15 grand. And the technology for combustion engines is getting better, where you're going to have better efficiencies on those combustion engines and pay 4 times less for it. That might be a better option than an electric car at this point.
Yeah, I'll finish it off, at least my thoughts with this. People really don't understand until you look it up just how many different things go in the oil and gas go into. It's not just into some moving vehicle's fuel tank. Natural gas is used and so is petroleum in everything from fertilizers to rubber tires to, some of the components in every one of the computers we're using. They use this stuff in everything. Just because, you see maybe a small decline in the amount of fuel being used doesn't mean this stuff is not going to be, still useful on numerous industrial applications. So.
Agreed. All right, we'll move on to question 2 here. Is that over the last 2 trading days, global stocks and bonds have rallied in hopes that signs of weakness in the U.S. economy will cause the Federal Reserve to soften its policy position. Is this just wishful thinking, or do traders actually believe the Fed will reverse course before the end of the year?
Personally, I think it's wishful thinking for now anyways. Markets aren't doing so hot today after a couple of days where they did pretty well. But Federal Reserve has a dual mandate. They want to control inflation, and their target is 2% CPI. And they want to maintain full employment, which means the U3 unemployment rate under 5%. And right now, CPI is at 8.3 and U3 is at 3.7%. So they have room to increase unemployment while fighting inflation. And not only are they continuing to say that they will continue to raise interest rates until CPI comes down to their target, but so are the Europeans. So is basically everyone except the Japanese, but that's a whole different story there. The European central bankers very recently, whether it's the ECB or some of the non-euro denominated currency central banks like the UK, like the Poles, they're committed to raising interest rates even further to continue fighting inflation. So I don't think interest rates are coming down anytime soon. The wild card, I think, is the election. I think the next Federal Reserve meeting is literally a few days before the midterm elections in the US. And in the past, they've tried to avoid looking political. So they may not raise rates in November. But I think there's another one in December, and I fully expect them to raise rates then too. Until they start seeing CPI come down, I don't think we should expect anything more than more rate hikes.
I agree. I think it's wishful thinking. I don't think the Fed is going to pivot, at least soon. for all the negative things that I say about the Fed, I do give them a little more credit for holding their own ground than, say, like the Bank of England, who basically capitulated and reversed course on its policy. It's almost like we're in the eye of the hurricane, and investors just want to hang out there a little while longer. We just had to go through the first half of the hurricane, and it was rough. So instead of pressing through to the other side, let's just stay here. Come on, Fed, don't make us go through that again. That's basically what investors are saying right now, or that's what their behavior is suggesting. However, I think the Fed has made it clear that it's committed to reining in inflation with their systematic interest rate hikes. And that reversing course would probably make them look weak and probably make them look ineffective. Now, granted, I don't see how these incremental rate hikes are going to curb inflation quickly. I think I've alluded to that a few times in my newsletter. If our economy was firing on all pistons and it was burning white hot, yes, interest rate hikes would probably cool it down, but that's not the problem right now. Our economy doesn't have a rapid growth problem. Our economy has a surplus of money problem. And I think the best solution is to just let the markets correct themselves and limit government intervention in the meantime. I think people will always do what's in their best interest, but we're all just waiting for the Fed to tell us what to do. And I don't think that's very effective. So no, I don't think the Fed's going to pivot this time around.
I think a lot of times we look at the markets and we think that that there's these really, really smart people that know exactly what they're doing, are doing things, and we're not doing it at the same time, and we feel like being left out. In reality, what it is really, really smart computers that they get data from a variety of different sources, and then based on that information, they start doing program trading, and the volume is so huge that it has an impact on the market in the short term. It's volatile in both directions, and I think yesterday the economic report came out and showed that joblessness is starting to increase, that employers are starting to lay people off in anticipation of a cooling economy. And all of these things, when put into the computer starts saying, okay, start selling off in investments based on what we think that the Fed's going to do. And then all these trades start taking place. Well, when this happens, there's people who are contrarians who are on the other side of the line, and they have to start selling investments because now those investments are going up and they sold short, and they have to start covering their positions, and it has a much broader impact on the market at large. When the markets go up really big in one day, or they go down really big in one day, it's not because of any of our clients. I mean, our clients are not the ones calling all at the same time and doing what everybody else is doing. It's these institutional traders who are doing high-speed trading, where they're trying to get a fraction of a second ahead of the competition, who are doing exactly the same thing with the same sort of algorithms in their computers. Quite frankly, I agree with both Alex and Drew. I believe that we're going to continue to see rate increases until we get that target inflation around 2% again. And until then, we should just buckle our seatbelts and just embrace the pain that's coming, because the Fed essentially is just taking the excess cash off the table.
They made no indication that they would stop before this year. So we did this in June. Everybody thought there was going to be signs of economic weakness would cause the Fed to pivot, as they like to call it. But that it didn't happen in June, and it's not going to happen this time. The biggest thing that people should worry about, though, is you have more of something that more closely resembles a centrally planned economy than a free market economy at this point, because every time the economy sneezes, the Fed's going to be like, well, we're just going to adjust the interest rate, and if we tighten too much, we're going to ease the interest rates back off and try and get the water to boil just right. And that's kind of sick, because we don't want to be in a centrally planned economy, but we kind of ended up here. And I don't know how you get back from where you are now, but hopefully what they'll do is they'll finish their rate hikes, and then they'll just stop and let the market do whatever it thinks it's in its best interest at that point. Because right now, the Fed pulling levers is not the way things are supposed to work, and it's happened gradually more and more since 2008 for sure. But it's been kind of a paradigm shift over the last couple of years here is now that anytime there's trouble, we're going to give subsidies, we're going to adjust the inflation rate, we're going to buy bonds, and that's just not a good recipe in my opinion. All right, move on to the lightning round. Elon Musk offered close to his original $44 billion deal to buy Twitter on the terms he originally agreed to today. If the deal goes through, this would avert a 5-day non-jury trial that was set to start on October 17th. What do you think changed Elon's mind? Was it he didn't want to go to trial? He decided he liked Twitter. What do you think his thought process was here?
I think it's because he didn't want to go to trial and lose. Twitter sued him because he tried to back out of the deal after he called them liars about the number of bots they have on their platform. And so they had already agreed to the sale. And so the Twitter board decided to sue to force the sale to go through, and he didn't want to lose. Plus, potentially any punitive damages or anything like that. So, yeah, I think he just didn't want to lose. He saw the writing on the wall and it's like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and buy it then. So I think that's all it really is.
I think what told him to do it was I think he's one of his human trials in the Neuralink chip in his brain. And I think that it went wrong, and it's telling him to do things that he ought not to do. I think so. I think it's the Neuralink chip.
I believe that Elon Musk was doing the whole drag his feet thing just to do a little bit more due diligence on the company. And I think that he's found intrinsic value in Twitter that if he ran the thing like he wants to, he can unleash that to the point where it's worth more than the $54 a share that he's offering for the company.
Man, I don't know. Twitter is like the biggest social media platform on the internet, so I guess I see some value from doing that. Why he keeps going back and forth like this, I'm not really sure what's going on. It could be the fact he's spending $44 billion on something that has a spotty profit record, but who knows. All right.
It's good theater, at least.
What's that?
It's good. It makes for good theater, which
gives us something to talk
very
about.
much Elon Musk.
Yeah. All right. Brett Favre allegedly, and keyword allegedly, funneled between $5 to $8 million, depending on the article you read, of Mississippi State welfare money to the University of Southern Mississippi's volleyball program. Is Brett Favre a terrible person, or is he just a victim of circumstance?
So I think this is one of those allegedly that you have to say, like when somebody's face is caught on camera as they rob a liquor store at gunpoint, and you can't say anything other than allegedly until they've been convicted. But, unless the text messages and phone call records and everything else are fake, it sounds like he knew what was going on, where the funds were coming from, and not just him, other people too. Doesn't look too good for Brett Favre. Whether that makes him a horrible human being, I don't know, but sure seems like he knew what was going on and went along with it anyways. So too bad.
I'll kind of go along with Alex. I don't know if I go as far as saying he's a terrible person, but if all the evidence suggests that he's guilty, then I think he should be tried accordingly.
I try to reserve my opinions in the court of world opinion until after the jury decides. Is that Brett Favre will have it. First of all, he's not been criminally charged. He's only been charged in the court of world opinion. But when the criminal charges come down, I withhold my opinion until the jury actually gives their verdict.
Why is it that what is it with parents in colleges? Like, we had the whole college funding scandal where they Photoshop faces on the bodies of athletes so that they could be like Division I athletes and get like scholarship money. And now you got the Mississippi governor giving Brett Favre a bunch of money that he passes on to the college that his daughter plays volleyball for. And I guess I don't understand. Is it that worth it to you to see your daughter play volleyball? I don't know. My daughter's 8, so I wouldn't know yet. But
well, $500,000 of that money ended up back in his pockets for speeches he didn't deliver. So
from what I've read is that supposedly he was going to pass that on to the school. That was just like a way to where they pay him and then he donated to the school. Look, his net worth supposedly to a couple of places online said he's worth about $100 million. Why not just give $5 million to the school and make your life a lot easier and not go through all the rigmarole of trying to apply or like write a grant for welfare money? But
Yeah.
You guys are harsh. Pitchforks and torches.
I guess my ultimate point is like, why'd you go through it? You're $100 million. Like, just give 5 to the school. And just, don't make it hard on yourself. All right. Last question is that a study out of New England found that people are more likely to avoid high-calorie foods when the label illustrates how much exercise is needed to offset the calories consumed. Do you think this is actually going to work? Do you think it's a good idea? What do you think about this?
Will it work? Probably not. And is it a good idea? Probably not. I'll give you a few reasons. Number one, it ignores the basal metabolic rate. Just by being alive and sitting on the couch, you probably burn somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 calories a day. So as long as you're staying under that, you don't have to do any exercise if you don't want to. Second, I tend to think consumer labeling should be informative rather than like prescriptive. Tell me what's in it, tell me how many calories there are, that kind of thing. But what I do with that information is then up to me. And then third, the example in one of the candy bars was like how much you have to go running. Well, I have a birth defect in a leg, and so I hate running. I'm not gonna run ever. And so if it says like you have to run for 42 minutes, my attitude looking at that candy bar is, well, I guess I'm gonna get fat.
Right. I think just having the calories speaks for itself. It's interesting though, because it will make people think in terms of real calories. It's kind of like getting people to think in terms of real dollars. If they go to buy a computer and on the computer box it says you have to work 85 hours in order to buy this, yeah, it might change your behavior a little bit. So I think it actually it'll work in the sense that it will cause changes in consumer behavior, but I don't know if it's going to have the outcome that they think.
I think it's incredibly useful information for people who care. Throughout the year here in Montana, we're very seasonal. We get all 4 seasons here. In the summertime, I burn a lot of calories just doing stuff around the ranch. But in the wintertime, I have to actually start doing physical fitness training to keep my weight under control. And there's lots of apps on my phone that I use to try to monitor how many calories I'm burning and how many calories I'm intaking. To be honest with you, all that information is already in the app. I don't need the food companies to put on their labels because I already have that information on the app. But what I'm suggesting is that when I'm interested, that information is very helpful. But when I'm not interested, I just buy the Little Debbie when I get my gas tank filled at the gas station.
It's a band-aid for a deeper problem. I mean, if you need to see how many calories you need to burn to work off this Snickers, it's either just like a kind of a novelty, or there's deeper problems. Because when you have a Snickers or you go to McDonald's and they have the calories listed on like a milkshake, for instance, if you're gonna have a milkshake, I think you would probably already have in your mind that it's gonna be calorically relatively expensive. And and if you have like a good program of diet, exercise, treating yourself to a milkshake, you don't really care what the calories are going to be because it's a treat. But if you need to be like, I got to burn off, I got to run for an hour after I drink this milkshake, or I got to bike for 2 hours, then I don't know. It's kind of a novelty, but if you need that to figure out if you're gonna buy something or consume something or not, I'd say you have deeper problems.
And it's a good point. I think that it's more appropriate on like a Whopper with extra bacon and cheese than it is on like a kale chip. Like, oh, I have to climb a flight of stairs and do half a sit up in order to burn this off. I don't think people are really concerned about the healthy foods. And like you said, Dad, if you're already healthy, what do you care?
Yeah. If you're going to consume like a double, the bacon Whopper or whatever it is, I mean, you're either treating yourself or you have deeper issues. If you think that's healthy.
I love calorie counting. To me, it is the most effective way for weight control is counting how many calories you're taking in and how many calories you're burning. And the double Whopper with cheese, the only time I even care is when I'm trying to lose weight or when I'm trying to maintain my weight. And there may be times going, yeah, I'll get a half a Subway sandwich instead of a full Subway sandwich because I'm watching my calories for the day. So I think the information is helpful. And it will change people's behavior if they care.
Yeah. I will say, Alex did a really harsh version of this a couple of years ago, but the intermittent fasting, and this is not for everybody, but I've done some of it, and it works great. And then you eat like a reasonable dinner, and then on the weekends, if you have like a milkshake or something like that, I mean, it doesn't matter because you've already, and it's I don't know, I've liked it, but I know Alex did a more intense version a couple of years ago, and it seemed to work pretty well for him. But some of the research on I've read on it is that it's pretty decent for you. But I mean, obviously that doesn't go for everybody, but
Right.
That's been a pretty effective way, I've thought.
Well, I think all diets are basically just gimmicks laid on top of physics or
Right.
thermodynamics, I guess. It's really energy out has to be equal to or greater than energy in. Otherwise, you will gain weight.
It's the opposite of saving. You want to spend more than you
Right.
save.
Right.
It's the exact opposite. All right. We're just about out of time, so we will do this again next week, and that's it for episode 56.